Today on Metaphysical Mississippi, we have our premiere episode of Ask a Dot Dot Dot. The guest today is Jessica and Sarah. You've seen them before. They're psychic mediums. It's going to be a fun talk, so come along and join us. Hey everybody, how y'all doing?
Hey, so happy to be here. Thank you so much for
Thank you for having us back.
Yes. Well, y'all know, well, we came out with this idea. Y'all been on here before, but I think we all kind of discussed it, and I thought it would be fun for our listeners to get a chance to ask you guys questions, to do what I get to do. So we've gathered them up, and Chris is gonna ask y'all the questions, but y'all have another event coming up too that I want us to touch on. And again, it is a psychic medium gallery, and it will be held at Soul Synergy in Flowood, Mississippi. And it's June 17th, is that correct?
Saturday night,
Yeah.
6 o'clock to 9 o'clock.
Yes. So if it
Folks can register online or buy tickets at the door.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah, and it'll be on our website, on our calendar, so people can go there as well to find the links to register. I know I went to the first one, and it was great. The first inaugural.
Yeah.
But I didn't attend this last one. I know Krista did. Do y'all want to share a little bit about what happened, the one that happened in April, the Medium Gallery?
Yes, thank you.
So that was the first one at Soul Synergy,
Right.
that you all had, and I was there, and I thought it was a great turnout.
It was.
And yes, lots of fun. So how was it for y'all?
It was so beautiful. I still think back on some of the pieces of evidence that came through for Jessica and myself through our conduits with spirit. And it was profound. I still to this day sort of pinch myself and think, oh my goodness, are we really doing this? I know that kind of sounds silly, but the evidence was just beautiful and on point and specific. And the names that came through were on point and specific. And people knew pretty much within the first couple pieces of evidence that came out, hey, I know that person. So it was a fantastic group of sitters. They were really engaging in the process. They were excited to be there. And we were on, Spirit was on a roll that night. People showed up with their loved ones. Jessica and I were so in the zone. We had prepared so much for this evening. We were so great to share all of this energy with these beautiful people who were out there. And it was amazing. Jessica, what do you want to say?
Absolutely amazing. I think one of my personal, favorite parts was how Spirit continually surprises me. Yes. And pushes and encourages me even in front of a live audience, because we had several experiences that were brand new for Sarah and I, and how we worked together and how Spirit presented together to us separately and as a team, and just really pushed and came through with some of the most profound healing messages where we were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this just happened, and happened the way that it happened, and kind of pushed us out of our comfort zone and expanded our skill set and our experience. And I mean, connecting with the audience in that way while connecting with each other and Spirit and learning is just indescribable. And so that was some of my favorite moments, is when we were like pushed outside of our box and we were trying to figure out on stage what exactly was happening and going on, and how Spirit was connecting with us. And it was really incredible.
I also just want to give kudos to Jessica, because our friendship has gotten so much stronger because of these events, and the trust that we have with one another as psychic mediums, but as friends and as sisters, really, in this soul journey that we're on. We changed our format a little bit at this last event at Soul Synergy, and we worked together initially, and I think that was the most beautiful way to start the event, because the energy between us was so big, and then it like literally we could feel it push out to the audience, and it just created this beautiful warm bubble of light, and it was really remarkable. And that woman right there, I will get on stage with her any day, any place, at any time.
Same. Sarah, your gifts are phenomenal, and you just show up in such a amazing, humble way. It's an honor to work with you.
Same, girl.
Absolutely.
And from being in the audience, first of all, the flow and interaction was almost seamless between the two of you. There
Oh, good.
there wasn't a whole lot of there's a few times you're looking at each other and maybe not mumbly, but you're talking to each other just a little bit, like checking in with each other. But it was just there was a synergy between the two of you. And toward the end, I don't even remember. I know it was toward the end, and I think it was Sarah's turn. She was doing the reading, but Jessica had picked up on stuff earlier, and how y'all just graciously, it's almost like you were tossing a balloon back and forth.
Yeah.
Like you were like assisting each other, but it wasn't when y'all were piggybacking each other. It was when you were each doing your own thing. It was like, no, I think you need to do this one.
Oh, yes.
I think you got the message better than me. I don't think you said that, but that's what I was interpreting, because I know you both, that y'all were like, even when you weren't working together and it was someone else's turn to do their thing, you were still like, oh, wait, y'all were sharing with each other.
Well, it's about not being an ego up there. And just because it's my turn, if Sarah is the medium that I feel like that this, loved one is meant to connect with, because she has the experience and speaks the language, then it's her turn, and it's about honor and spirit and relaying those messages. And that same spirit, that same loved one connected with me for a different message in a different way, but there was a portion of it that Sarah was meant to deliver and experience. And so that's what with the mumbling back and forth was, and that's where spirit pushed us out of our comfort zone. And Sarah and I have such a great energy together that we don't get offended, or if she gets a few more minutes or I get a few more minutes, it's much more about being an open vessel for the loved one and connecting with the audience, and excuse me, and them getting them healing messages that they're meant. It's not about Sarah and I at all. So we both have that in the forefront. So when we work together, we're able to, like you said, have that synergy, and it did kind of feel like a balloon bouncing back and forth. And I feel like being in that heart space really is what brings the energy up and makes it everything it's meant to be.
Yes.
Well, and it was beautiful to witness. And also, there was I think at the first inaugural we had more physical environmental things happen to provide evidence and proof. But at this one, there was more with the messages that came through, the information that you all delivered. I think at the first one, most everybody that was there, the inaugural one, either Jessica or Sarah, one of you knew the people there. This one at Soul Synergy, there were people there you did not know. And the loved ones who came through for those people and the information, it just like it you couldn't have made that up. I mean,
no, you couldn't.
Just some of the things. And so to me, there was a different feel.
Yeah.
They each felt different of the two galleries that I've witnessed that you've given so far. and they were both special in their own way. And so yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. Well, you know what the other cool thing was, just because we knew a lot of folks who were in the audience, we don't know who their loved ones are, right?
I
So we
know,
didn't know
I
who they
know.
belonged to. So even if we had a personal relationship with somebody, you know, there were a couple of participants who are dear friends of all of ours, right? And like, we didn't know that they had this person in their lives. They never spoke to us about Jessica or I about this individual in their lives. And so after the
Exactly.
gathering, we're like, who is this person? Tell us more. So, I mean,
Right.
we don't
Or
know.
even if we did know them, it just made us have to work harder to provide more
Correct.
evidence that we wouldn't have
Exactly.
known in our human
Yes.
self. So it pushes us to, you know,
Exactly, because, okay, you may know Sally Jane over there's grandmother died, and you feel like it's Sally Jane's grandmother, and you know she knows, you know the grandmother died. So you really got to like, okay, grandma, you got to give me you
Give
got to
me
give
more.
me something more than you baked apple pies and you crochet.
Right,
You know, I need
exactly.
something,
Yeah.
I need something specific, and
Right.
and so yeah, so just because you may know
And that you
that,
have
that does make it harder.
or that does somebody have an Aunt Mary or Bruce back in the 1930s? Come on. Everybody has an Aunt Mary.
Right, exactly. Everybody's got an Aunt Mary, right? A Susan or a Karen. Right, yes, absolutely. Yeah, and the cool thing is this time the names that came through were just so impactful, like quick, direct, meaningful names. And the sitter, the
Not
audience
so
member was
many,
like,
yeah.
yes, that is my person. I know exactly who you're talking about. And we had a child show up. We had a soul that was not born yet show up. That was probably one of the most amazing things
yes,
of that evening.
phenomenal.
Jessica and I
Oh.
were like, the two of us, that ping pong that you're describing, the two of us, like we both were lit up and we had to wait our turn just a minute. And then when the moment came, we were like, oh, let me just share this.
Yes.
And it was beautiful because we're also in that moment too. Like you have to trust the person that you're reading with implicitly. And that's what happened. That was the beauty of what I feel like we shared that evening, is that connection between the two of us and that trust that we have.
I have a
Mhm.
question. Of course, I'm going to sneak in a question, even though this is supposed to be
All right,
question.
go ahead.
All right. So I know you two have practiced together, and of course, y'all probably did training, and then y'all. Okay. So, how did you know when you were first learning to piggyback that you weren't just agreeing with what she saw because she audibly said it? Did y'all ever like write down on a piece of paper and then both lift it up and say, this is what I saw, or this is what I saw? Have you already done that? You know what I mean?
I
Just
haven't
like,
personally done that. It's a good idea to do that, to kind of check, you know, and
Yeah.
validate yourself, but it's much more about being ethical and integrity, kind of like just being honest, you know. So like
Right,
if
right.
if I'm getting different information than Sarah is, I have to check and see, am I connected to the same person, especially when our loved ones can come on the same frequency wave, you know.
Yeah.
So or she may be receiving different information from the same loved one than I am because of our different past backgrounds and experiences. But when we check in with our bodies as our communication tool and we ask,
Yeah.
is this the same communicator? Is this the same thing? Or I can, like what happened at our last gallery, I can check with Sarah and say, hey, are you picking this up? And it may be that she is, but it's not in her like forefront awareness.
Yeah.
And she can validate and say, yes, I'm getting that, but I'm getting something else right now too. So
Sure.
it's a checks and balances, and you know, just that being very ethical and integrity and integral what
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Sarah, how do you?
Well, I really feel the blending of the energy. It doesn't, so I think about my auric field is kind of like that bubble that Glinda the Good Witch comes down in The Wizard of Oz. It's iridescent, it's safe, right? It's you can see in, you can see out, and we can paint it one picture, one color or another. We can put mirrors around it, we can fill it with light. we can travel in it, right? So I feel that field for me blend with Jessica's. And so that's how I know we're connected, because I can feel the pull, the energy pull in my physical body blend with hers. Now, it's not a complete blend. It's sort of like two overlapping circles, and like the space
Yeah.
in the middle, right? See this right here? That's the space
Yeah.
in the middle to me. And that's where we blend. So I'm a circle and she's a circle, but then when we come together, that space in the middle is the blend. So I feel that. And if she's taking the lead, I'm sort of in the back, and we call it an L shape, that we just blend the energies together. And it's a feeling in the physical body. And we've had to practice that. We've had to practice it physically together, on a platform, on a stage. We've done that before in classes, but then we practiced again, and we're getting better at how that feels in the physical body.
I wanted to say, as someone who knows Jessica and Sarah outside of classes, and I know them each individually, and have watched them grow together and separately. Number one, those kind of things, I guess we did similar things in class, maybe, of just not trying to prove, but they've worked so much together that at this point they don't have to do those type of exercises, because they've already worked so much together in other things. And the other thing I want to say is, which I love about both of them, is they will speak their mind when they need to. So if they are not seeing what the other one's seeing, they're going to say it.
Yes.
Whether they say it to the audience or not, but they're going to give each other a look and be like, "Oh, that's not what I." So I think they have this their machinery is oiled well already, but it was, y'all, the training and the it didn't just happen overnight and just with the snap of a finger. It did take a couple of years of y'all working separately and together to get to where you can collaborate the way you do. Well, I have a question, and even if there is an answer to this, you may not want to divulge it, but is there anything that for this coming up gallery that y'all are going to tweak or do a little different than the last one? I mean, because I'm sure each one of them is still a learning experience. Or do y'all want to just surprise us?
Yeah, well, we're talking, and we've been talking about some things. I'll just say this. Physical items sometimes hold, sometimes they hold incredible energy from folks who've crossed over. And we can feel that energy, and sometimes it makes the reading that much more profound.
So is that a hint or a tip for anyone?
Maybe.
I got you. So, well, we may go ahead and transition to our listener questions. Like Emily said, we put the word out that we were going to have our listeners ask you medium some questions. And so I was going to go through some of those, because inquiring minds want to know. Let's see. First of all, what are some reasons, and we may have touched on some of these questions in previous podcasts, but we'll do a little revisit. What are some reasons why people would even come to a mediumship reading or get a private reading from a medium?
Jessica.
Sometimes they just want to know that their loved ones are okay, or that they're not suffering. Sometimes they have questions. Sometimes, their passing was quick and there were things left unsaid, and they, want to make amends or forgiveness, or they want to know, if their loved ones are with their loved ones that passed before them, if they're with their family, sometimes they want to validate or verify that they are experiencing their own personal signs from their loved ones, like bubble gum wrappers or coins of hearing, or birds, coming to visit. And sometimes they just want to know more about how they passed, like if there was questions around their passing, if they weren't conscious at the time, they want to know, did you hear what I said? Did you experience this? And so they want to know that their loved ones are taken care of, or they have, questions about things sometimes.
And to get those specific questions might be better in a private one-on-one reading, but in a gallery reading, if that's
Yeah.
a more general conversation may take place between you and the loved one to give to the sitter.
Well, I think it's always interesting to enter a venue like that with this kind of the knowing of why you're there. It's always interesting. I mean, Jessica and I still have questions.
Right,
I think a lot of people come with questions, or they're curious, or they've never been to perhaps a psychic or a medium before. And so they're really just there because they do have internal questions, not even questions about their loved ones. They might have just questions for themselves about how this works. But then sometimes people are too afraid to do a one-on-one. So they'd rather do it in a group and feel like there's safety there in numbers. And if they happen to make that connection, it might just be the resolve or the settling or the grounding or the sort of deep breath, aha moment that they need. And that's all they need. They might not need a more in-depth session. Everybody's got a little bit different reason for why they do end up coming up. Sometimes people just show up because their friend took them.
Yeah.
And their life has changed afterwards. I mean, that can happen.
They're curious, yeah. And our same listener, Lisha, asked, so how do you really know you're connected to their loved one? And I think we've kind of touched on that before, but how do you as the medium know, okay, yep, I'm connected to this person?
Yeah, well, sometimes we don't know right away. So when you're like literally in a very large room, here's the other thing too. We divide the audience into sections. So we feel which side of the room our energy is connected to. Like I remember we kept saying that a lot. I know I'm on this side of the room. I know I'm on this side. I'm not, dogging you all over here, but I am on this side of the room with this message. And sometimes it takes a little bit more pieces of evidence to get there. Sometimes all you need to do is say a name. There was one time where I knew the name and I turned my body because I knew what side of the room I was supposed to be on. And I said, who's connected to so-and-so? And then somebody went, oh.
Yeah.
Other times it was like describing the characteristics of a gentleman who came through on the left side of the stage, and I was describing his personality and describing his physical home, and that he was a person who was very territorial, and he had a lot of firearms at his disposal, like in every crevice of his body, or a chair, or his car, and the woman was like, that's me. So it really depends on what comes through. And sometimes we even had somebody say, hey, I'm pretty sure that person is fine, but can you tell me a little bit more? Yes, we can. Thank you for saying that. It makes us work a little harder. We like that challenge.
Because you don't always get a name. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah.
No, we don't always get a name. Sometimes I get a sound and I don't know the name. Sometimes I don't get a name of the person who's passed, but I get a name of a person who they're connected to. That happens quite often for me. It might not be the direct person, but somebody else's name will come through that's in the circle of family or friends that we're connected, that energy that we're connected to.
Yeah.
Emily, did you have something?
I just want to say, sometimes when you instantly connect, somebody's there. Have you ever had an immediate, like, bam, there is how they've passed on, like that, before you, and then you dissect, well, who is this? I mean, like gut to the heart,
Or is it comes in different different times, doesn't it? Do you have a set way it comes in, or you just?
Yeah, that's fine. It just comes in whenever. Okay.
Or how? Do you
Yeah,
think part of
Jessica,
that depends on, and we're just guessing here because we don't know. The thing you're going to pick up first, do you think may have something to do with whatever that energy is, whatever is most important to the energy coming through? That maybe they're not focused on what their name was then, they're more focused on the message or
Yeah.
the way their energy identifies themselves in that last incarnation was, I liked guns, so I'm going to show you guns. You know, it was whatever the energy feels like is the most pertinent thing. If their name was John, there may be 10 people in there that had a cousin named John, you know, or an uncle named John. So the name John may not, but if the name John is given to you, you're going to share that, I guess. So,
yeah. And sometimes we have to ask how they passed. They might not give that to us right away. They might want to talk more about personality and message. And so sometimes we have to pause for a minute and ask about passing. Sometimes I've even had spirit say to me, I don't want to talk about that. It's not important. These are the things that are important.
Because what may be important to the energy or spirit coming through and the person receiving, those important things may not be the best things that y'all would receive to give evidence or proof. So you have to ask for the evidence and proof so you can make sure you're connecting with the right. Yeah.
I was going to ask, do they always have a message? But I guess sometimes the message is, hey, I'm here. I mean, or do they always have a poignant message to send to a loved one?
That's a really good question. Sometimes they do just want to check in and say, hey, I'm here, I'm good. Sometimes they're curious in how it works, but spirit doesn't waste energy. So when they do come through, even if it's just as simple, I'm here, I want to see how this works, there's always a message and there's always healing in it. So we do get those kind of random, kind of like, hey, this is fun, or I'm curious, you know, but there's always, you know, healing in that.
So the healing could be for the spirit connecting or the person is the sitter, right?
Both.
Yes, it can be for both.
It can go either way. I mean, I think of, you know, Jessica probably talked about this too, but spirit who comes through, part of their healing when they can have the opportunity to give message, that's a part of a soul sort of shedding some of those human aspects so that it becomes, it can let go of guilt, shame, fear, right? And then hold on to the aspects of the soul closest to unconditional love.
So let's just say you have a loved one who is healed and they really have no need to come back. Will they come and just send a message of hello just for the sitter and not for themselves, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes they do spiritual drive-bys.
Yeah, okay, that's what that means.
Like, hey,
that's what
message,
that means. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Spirit can do that. They can do spiritual drive-bys. Absolutely.
Because I've heard you say before that they may be off doing something else. So, okay. So that's gotcha.
Good. So one of our listeners, Jessica, asks, was there ever a time when you could not decipher the dead from an actual living person? So the way I interpret that question is well, do you understand that question, Sarah, Jessica?
Yeah. Jessica, you want to
take it, Sarah? Or Jessica?
Yeah. For me, usually, you know, and I'm still growing and developing, you know, in my abilities too. But usually when I can't tell and I have to ask if it's not very clear, they're usually in a state of transition. You know, they're ill or they're sick or they're, you know, maybe under the influence of some medication, you know, to keep them comfortable. And Sarah had talked about this before, you know, in our previous podcast, and we talk about this at galleries too. Sometimes they're in that transition state, the soul kind of hovers in and out. And so they haven't fully crossed over yet. And then sometimes once the physical body has passed, our loved ones stay around, you know, 1 or 2 weeks to kind of help their loved ones through the transition and their grief. And so when their soul is still kind of more earthbound and it's very newly transitioned out of their physical body, it can be a little bit more gray than if they've been crossed over for a long time or have been passed for, you know, a month or 3 months, you know. So sometimes there are those kind of gray areas where we have to ask, and really, like, the energy feels different. It feels a little more dense. It feels a little more thick and heavy to me. Not low frequency. It just feels different than someone who is transitioned into a higher dimension because they're still in this 3D human earth world. And so the energy does feel different. And so my body kind of sends up a signal like something's different about this, and I have to ask more questions. And so that's typically when I've experienced it. Sarah may have a different experience if you want to.
Yeah, I read for, and I guess this is kind of a blending of psychic and mediumship at the same time. And Jessica, I'd love to hear what you think about it. But I had a girlfriend whose mom was passing. She was in hospice, asked me to kind of go in and see if I could. And it was the first time I'd ever done it, to have a conversation with her because she was incapacitated. She did not have the ability to speak words. And I was able to, blend with her energy. And again, I think partly because she was in that in-between space that Jessica described. So her soul was like silly putty. It was like part of it was still human and the other part of it was connecting up to what I've been told is heaven or the fifth dimension, right? So this, whatever the platform is up there that our loved ones cross to, there was this silly putty sort of connection string between. So I knew that she was wallowing sort of in and out of dimensions, third and fifth. But she literally was able to show me, help me see the whole room. I was able to describe the whole room of where her mother was. And she's in a different state, different part of the country than I was, because I was here in Mississippi. And I was able to, she was able to tell me some of the things that had happened either that day or the day before. There was music playing, there was specific music playing. I remember that. And it was about touch and other things that had happened, and something about her dad that was very particular piece of evidence. So it can happen. Like, and I don't, again, it's all energy. So was it psychic? Yeah, probably a little bit. Was it mediumship? Yeah, probably a little bit. I feel like it was definitely an in-between sort of space. And Jessica totally hit it on the head when she said it just felt different. Just felt.
Now, what about, because I feel like this is kind of what our listener Jessica's asking, because this is where my head's going. Because, you know, there's those of us or people who astral travel or experience different states of consciousness in their sleep, whether it's intentional or non-intentional, or other, you know, if we want to get really mystical and talk about the skinwalkers or all those things. Have you ever been thinking you were about, because you're trying to connect to the energy of a deceased loved one, but something's coming in that's not, this is not a deceased, this is something else, or is it someone who is alive and just time slipping or something? I don't know. Do you understand the question?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to, at least for me, it feels different energetically. the energy signature is just different from someone who is fully transitioned, who is partially transitioned, and who is living and is traveling or projecting. For me, it just feels different, and I ask the questions, and I have to trust the answers that I get. But that's a really great question. And I think we briefly sprinkled or touched on this too. Like, how do you know who you're talking to? Like in the last, are you talking to your spirit team? Or are you talking to someone's loved one? The energy signature is just different, and the information, I perceive it differently. Either I see it or I hear it or I sense it in my body differently. They all kind of have different frequencies and energy signatures, and it's trial and error and asking questions to practice differentiating what those are. Angelic frequencies feel different to me versus fourth dimensional being or astral projection beings, or living or non-living physical body beings. They just feel differently, and by asking what is this, or where is this coming from, and then it kind of stores in like an energy muscle memory, if that makes sense. And so when I experience it a few times, I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly what this is coming through. So that's, for me, how I experience it. Sarah may want to talk on how she experiences it a little differently.
Yeah, I sometimes I'll get a knowing. Like I recently, at a recent psychic fair, I just heard and I immediately knew a spirit guide. So I was connecting with somebody's spirit guide, and they needed to get some information from this individual. I also, sort of like how Jessica alluded to this, I sort of see things as a scale. So if like we're here in third dimension, then fourth is, and I see them in different colors as you go up. So like I'll see the scale, and they're like in blocks, almost like an elevator that goes up. And they have different colors, so I can kind of connect. My body is, and again, these things happen over time. And some of these things like that, what I just described, is kind of new for me, because previously I would just know, or I get a word. But now, as I continue to read and hone, continue to open up my vessel more and more, the way that message is delivered can be a little bit different. So that scale, that visual scale, for me is something that's new. But it is really great to be able to have been offered that, so that it gives me more of a direct knowing immediately. And I might not have to ask more specific questions. I may, and I still do sometimes, just to verify myself that the vision I'm getting is correct.
Well, for me personally, I don't go around doing it 24/7. And most of the time I'm not even doing it consciously. It's just like, oh, what was that?
Sometimes we just get hit with these things. It's not like you're asking or you're trying to peer into somebody's auric field. Sometimes you just get hit. That happens to me all the time. And then I have to discern.
I don't want to know.
Right. And then I have to discern, was it just for me to know? Am I supposed to give this message? Do I need to wait? Is there a timing issue? Like, I have to ask myself a ton of questions.
So that leads to one of our other questions.
I'm sorry, the dog barked.
I think it was Russell asked, in a session, or even if it's not in a session, do you receive messages that you don't want to relay to someone or a sitter? Does that happen, and how do you handle that?
That's a really great question. Russell has hit on one of the things of being a psychic medium that sometimes is not pleasant. Sometimes we receive, information that is uncomfortable for us as humans, as souls. However, I believe my job is to be a translator of sorts, not an interpreter. So if the
good point,
if
I like
the communicator has something that is uncomfortable, then for me, I don't get to pick and choose what messages I deliver based on my level of comfort. It's not about me. It's about the communicator, the loved one, and about the recipient, the person in the audience or who's sitting across the table from me, because they need to hear it. You know, they
Yeah.
need that healing. However, I do have discretion most of the time on how I deliver that message in a kind and loving way that results in some type of closure or healing. And if I get it wrong, trust and believe that the spirit communicator will say so, and I have to back up and try again. I have to
Love
ask
it.
for clarification, or sometimes they'll say, it must be said this way. It must be this blunt. It must be exactly verbatim, or it doesn't hold the same weight. And it's not for me to decide. When I do have a little freedom of the way that I deliver the message, it's like it's not like a forefront question that I ask. Can I paraphrase this? You know, I just get that like confirmation from the spirit says it's okay to paraphrase this in the way that is going to be the most healing, because sometimes they're new to it and they just are trying to deliver. Sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's a thought, sometimes it's not a sentence, sometimes it's just a, you know, and I have to like put that what I'm perceiving into words. So then I have a little bit of freedom. But if I'm hearing it, I always say they are telling me I'm hearing them say this and they want it to be this way. I don't get to pick and choose. And so it's not about my level of comfort. It's about healing for my communicator and for my sitter.
Well, and you're just the medium. You're not telling that person, that message isn't from you.
Right.
The
And I think
message
that's
is
the difference in being an interpreter and being a translator. When, you know, when you're
Mhm.
translating, you're saying verbatim what that other person is saying. When you're an interpreter, so to speak, you kind of have a little leeway to paraphrase.
and the sitter can take it or not.
Right. Sometimes
mean-
I'll put something and say, your family member or your loved one is giving me some pretty, maybe some uncomfortable information. Are you okay if we go ahead and proceed? And if the sitter says no, we move on. Like Jessica said, it's not about me. It's about who's sitting across from me. And here's the thing too, is that sometimes spirit needs to give those healing messages to help heal their soul, but that doesn't mean that the person sitting in front of me is ready to hear it, right? And so then the other thing that happens sometimes is I will get a piece of a story or a piece of information, and then I'll hear the sitter, they need to tell you what the situation is. It's like a hard stop. I get blocked and I'll have to say, okay, I'm blocked. That means to me, typically speaking, I need you, part of your healing essentially is to tell me and communicate with me verbally what is going on here. And then once that happens, the energy comes across and goes back up, and then it meets somewhere in the middle, and then it can flow.
You think that's because the energy or the spirit needs to know that that sitter understands what's going on, or takes some accountability or responsibility, or they want to hear that now?
Sometimes, and sometimes it's just an acknowledgement of the situation, because as human beings, we don't want to always talk about the hard stuff, right? We stuff that down. We don't want to talk about the things that cause big emotions in our physical body. We don't want to express those things because it causes us great discomfort emotionally. But really, at the end of the day, what their loved one is asking them to do is to release that emotion from the physical body by explaining what the situation was. Once it gets spoken, it moves, right? So if it's moving, then the movement is a part of the healing.
Mm-hmm.
And not the movement, but the acknowledgement, the ownership of whatever it was, it doesn't have that like hold on it anymore. It loosens up sort of the tentacles, and it allows it to be more free flowing. Back and forth. It's a pretty amazing thing when that happens, because that's what I really know. When I get a hard stop, it's literally because the sitter has to own something, has to provide a piece of the energy to match. It's not my job to force it.
Now, a sitter does have the free will, or the authority is not the word I'm trying to think of, but I can't think of the right word. I think we've talked about this in other podcasts or discussions between us. If there was someone who passed who you had a difficult relationship with, it's going to be hard to listen to any guidance from them when their soul on earth was not someone you wanted guidance from.
Correct.
And we as humans, I mean, I trust a medium has some awarenesses and some knowings that maybe me as a sitter would not have. But it's going to be hard for me as a sitter to hear that from you, another human being, saying that my loved one loosely because there was abuse or there was whatever there was, I don't want, I may say, I don't even care if it's right or wrong. I don't want that person to tell me something. But if they're doing a one-on-one session, if they say, I don't want to talk to my Uncle John, Billy Bob, or whatever, because of XYZ, if he comes through, do y'all say, sorry, no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And most of the time, if I say I have your Uncle Billy Bob here and they don't, want to connect with them, then I'll thank Uncle Billy Bob for showing up and let them know they're not ready to connect with you right now. Give it some time. And sometimes they come in and say, I know they're not ready. I just need them to know that when they're ready, that
Okay.
I'm here. And sometimes, going back to the previous question a little bit, when Sarah was talking about being blocked, the way I experience that sometimes is that the loved one will communicate to me, there was an event, an instance, and it's not for you to know, but just by mentioning it, they know exactly what it is, right? And it's to kind of not shame the sitter and not to like make them feel so vulnerable that they can't receive the message. I've had them come and say, I need to acknowledge this and take ownership of this, but it's not for you to know, but they know what it is. And
So
when I
before
say
you-
that, every time they're like, I know exactly what they're talking about. And so they can be very discretionary in the way that they acknowledge their role and part and give healing, and still are trying to protect their, living loved one here, from me knowing everything about that very intimate, situation. So they can be discreet in how we receive things too. So
do you kind of check in to make sure that before you deliver a message to a sitter that might be uncomfortable or something that is to be about a lesson for them, make sure that there's already, okay, this person is someone that they have a positive connection with? Because if Uncle Billy Bob comes in and says they shouldn't be doing that in their life, but Uncle Billy Bob was an alcoholic drug addict that beat his wife, that credibility is not, of course, that may not happen. I don't know. I'm probably making up situations just to sound like a troublemaker, but I just, we really.
What Jessica's trying to say is, if we give enough evidence for the sitter to say, I know what you're talking about, it is not our human response. Our professionalism says, okay, you got it, we're going to move on. We're not supposed to dig any deeper, because that's when ego comes into part of the question, right? We know that. The sitter says, yep, I'm good. We're off to, and we're asking for more information. We're not going to sit there and dwell on it, because that's an invasion of somebody's privacy in spirit and in form.
I think, Krista, kind of to touch on what you were saying too, like, if you didn't have a good relationship with your loved one, or, the spirit communicator, the person, coming through, you can always refuse to connect. You can listen to what they have to say. You don't have to take it. But typically when you're coming to a medium to connect with a spirit, it's not to ask their advice on life, like, do you like my partner or whatever,
Right.
and they're coming for healing a lot of times, and to make amends in a sense. If you want to know about your life's journey and if this is the right partner for you or the right job or career for you, you would want more of a psychic reading.
Right.
If you connect with your grandmother and you ask your grandmother, well, do you like my spouse? Well, if when she was living, she met that person, she didn't like him, she's probably not going to like him now. Like, like we don't suddenly evolve, so to speak, so fast. Sometimes we think of them like becoming superhuman, where they don't have these, I guess, anger or resentment or fear, but they still have that portion of their human personality as a soul when they
Right.
connect with us. And then there's an aspect of them that is doing their soul work and healing and growing and maturing. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a soul journey, it's a human journey. And so and there's and maybe at some point we can talk about the difference in why you would choose to have a session with a psychic over a medium and what kind of different information you get there. But
Well,
they're not typically given life advice unless it's very specific to validate and confirm that they're on the right track, or they're on the right path, or they're doing something they know they shouldn't be doing. But if they don't have a good relationship with them, it's not going to be any more well received than it is if they were living here, or if you had a poor relationship with another human here, it's going to have the same kind of effect sometimes.
So a message from a loved one typically will be hopefully a message and not a hand slapping.
Typically it is, unless they're, it's another, when they're saying you're on the right track or they're slapping your hand, it's just more validation for the most part of saying, I'm still here with you. I'm still watching over you. I'm still a part of your life. And I care about you. So quit doing these things that aren't good for you. And they're not good for you,
Right.
but it's in a kind and loving way. It's meant to encourage growth and to stay on the right track. It's not meant in a way that's scolding or shameful or guilt tripping. It's about like, you're better than this. You got this. Quit doing this so you can live a happy and abundant life,
Right. Well, that actually segues to our next question from Carly. She asks, how do you know the difference between mediumship and psychic messages? I think we kind of were saying that. So,
Sarah, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, well, you really just answered a lot of that question. Sometimes, we were taught to know the differences in the physical body. How do we, just the knowing where the energy comes from. And it took me a long time to understand that feeling in my body, because I would just get flooded with information and I didn't quite understand how to differentiate between the energies. Now I know in practice that psychic is more of a blending of those auric fields this way, where mediumship for me is like literally this PVC pipe above my head with all these different strands of wires from Sarah, from angel energies to Reiki energies to connection that I've had with my own spirit guides, those sorts of things in this like vessel that I have above my head. So there's a different sensation in the physical body. Sometimes when you're reading medium, you have your spirit person over here, right? But then they're saying, hey, we want to talk about a subject, and then you blend with the sitter this way, but they're still here hanging on. So sometimes you have to like press pause over here and then blend with this one and then disconnect from this one and then come back to here. But we learn how to do as professionals. That comes with time. That's not something that you necessarily just wake up knowing. That's why we call this a practice, because it's constantly changing. We're constantly getting new information. Our bodies are our communication tools. Jessica and I talk about that all the time. We're constantly getting different feelings, different knowings. And I have almost like a screen sort of in my purview where like words shoot across or colors shoot across. It's almost like a movie screen for me. And so sometimes I'll get messages that way too. And so it's just, and then I have to, and then you can ask questions. Is this coming through psychically? Is it a mediumship? And at the end of the day, does it matter? Sometimes it doesn't, because the message is what's really the important thing, right? It really doesn't matter how it's coming through, because it's all energy. And sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you don't have to know.
Right. So I like that analogy, and I guess I've heard that before, but the way you said it just kind of sunk in again. Mediumship is we're more connecting with the spirit or energy outside. Psychic is you're connecting with the person more. Yeah. If you're doing readings. Right. And then mediumship for me, I get
women are on the right side of my body and men are on the left, and anybody they them is sort of hovering overhead in the in-between space. So I can differentiate based on the symbols, the like a ringing in my ear, or a heaviness on one side of my body, or I see numbers on one side versus the other side of my vision board of my screen. So I know how many men are here, how many men are here, how many women are here, and how many people up in the different spaces could be fluent in their gender. And they identified that way in life. And so that's how they're presenting now. So it's really about, again, that practice, working more with your energy, practicing more, having some friends in your spiritual community that you can practice with on a regular basis, ask questions to, go to classes, find resources online. You'll know sort of in your heart and in your body if it feels good or if it doesn't feel good. Look for people who have been doing this work for a long time, who are critically acclaimed, that have really good reviews. You know, don't just find those people who send you messages on Instagram, hey, your energy feels great, let me give you a reading. You're like, and no, not today or ever, thank you.
Yes.
You're not the real deal, and all you want to do is take somebody's money.
If my energy feels great, then do I need a reading for you?
Yeah.
So can I throw in one last question to y'all? Because I think this is a good one. You mentioned, you know, some of us are newer to this, or whether we've had the abilities for a while, we're new to exploring them. And so Julia asks, if a person is just starting to become aware of their gifts, what are some tips to practice channeling or working with energy or spirits? And I think you kind of touched on some of those, but do you want to share?
Yeah, I think the best way to sit in practice is to meditate. That's a really perfect place to start. To me, prayer is an ask, meditation is a receive. So when we're sitting in meditation, we're focusing on breath, we're coming back to breath, we're opening our body and our vessel to hear, to receive. And that is the best way to start making connection with a metaphysical anything. That would be my first place to start always. Again, having friends who are like-hearted, like-minded in those sorts of ways, continuing to grow in your education. I would always suggest having a balance between human teachers and spirit guides. I have had teachers be in both places where one was really just this way and another one was more focused this way. And so having that combination of both feels really good. And I have had people who have been in those places where both have been really good, but having to understand the ethical components of delivering message as a human being is extremely important to make sure that you're acting in somebody's highest and best good, and to understand that your ego needs to literally take a seat, like it needs to just go sit over there. If you're totally disconnected with spirit all the time, you can let that sort of relationship rule. And we as humans have to find a balance between being human and being spiritual, right? We're not spiritual all the time, or else we're never going to be productive and pay the mortgage. So we have to have day jobs. And sometimes we're beautiful enough that lives are like for folks doing this, you know, full time, because they put their time and their practice in, and it's all sort of come together. So I would really suggest meditation at first, education, like-minded group of people, continue to coming to all the Metaphysical Mississippi events, meet new people, network with people, ask somebody for coffee or lunch or dinner. That's the best way to get to know people in our community, I think. Don't be afraid to do that. I think that's really important advice. It was certainly advice that I received and took. Has been very helpful to me.
Now, do you feel like is some form of protection or intention important if someone's new to meditating and new to, you know, asking, okay, spirit guides, I have my sign open, you know? You kind of want to have a little filter there.
Well, that's why you don't necessarily want to do that. Jessica's always amazing about, I'm going to say the ground clear and protect, and let her speak to that. But you don't, when you're just getting started, and if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it can be dangerous energetically. And my advice would be to make sure that you don't put yourself in a position where you are allowing anything and any energy and or any entity to enter. That is not safe.
Mhm. Mhm. So is that where if maybe we were raised or we identify with a certain belief system or practice, might come in handy, like if you come from the Christian background and you still feel identified with that by simply start prayer and, in Jesus' name or whatever. I mean, that might be a way to put that protection, or burning incense, or just something that's making an intention of, yes, I'm open to receive, but only, do you want to give us some input, Jessica?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things to do is to ground. And the reason I say that is because to connect psychically or mediumistically, you have to be able to have a strong foundation and be rooted in the earth. And I visualize it as a tree. The deeper and stronger the roots, the higher the branches can go, the stronger the connection is, the thicker they get.
Yes.
If you have a weak root system, you're going to topple over. So you must ground into the earth. You must stay connected between this human world, 3D and 5D and up, to have that balance. And the next thing I always recommend doing is clearing your energetic field from any and everything that doesn't serve your greatest and highest good. You don't want negative thoughts or feelings or something from the past, worry about the future, kind of clogging up this energetic field. It kind of gets you out of ego. You can release all of the worries and fears of the day, and focusing on the joy, that serves your highest good. It helps raise your frequency and energy as you're trying to connect spiritually. And then protection. And I call that setting intention. Christy, you called it prayer. Some people who are shamanic or have different cultural or religious backgrounds may call it different things, but it's setting that intention for my best and highest good to receive the healing messages, to be protected. Only high frequency energies coming in and connecting, right? And you really want to be very clear about who you are and who you're not willing to connect with, and what energies you are and aren't willing to connect with. And I picture this bubble. Some people's bubble looks like a metal shield. Some looks like mirrors. Some looks like a rubber ball where any negative things will bounce off and back out. So however you want to imagine or picture and call in any team, if you connect with angels, call in your angels. If you connect with a certain deity or religious group, call those in. Any ancestors, any spirit animal, anybody that you feel like is a good, strong protection to kind of help you keep your energy field safe, call those in for protection and set that intention very clearly. And then to touch on what Sarah said, the very first thing we learned to do was to breathe and just sit and clear the mind, and to experience our loved ones and different energies coming into contact with that energetic bubble, but not connecting. We're just witnessing, right? So we're sitting and breathing, we're clearing the mind, and we're just feeling or experiencing and witnessing how we perceive different energies around us without connecting. That's the very first thing we learn to do, is to breathe and to just be still and kind of witness what we're experiencing before we attempt to connect, because you want to be able to maintain the integrity of your own energetic field and to discern the difference between those different energy signatures to a degree. So most definitely learn to ground, clear, protect, set your intention, and then just sit and breathe and clear the mind and witness what you're experiencing.
I think with so many things, it's really starting with self, like,
yes,
but before we want to start connecting with all the other beings out there, let's like work on our inner stuff.
Yes.
Let's get
Yes.
let's clear, like the clearing.
Yes.
That's part of the clearing. Like
Mhm.
know yourself. If we know ourselves, then we're going to be able to tell more of like what that energy is, what that energy is. But if we don't even know ourselves, how can we discern anything else?
Mhm. Mhm.
Of
Yep.
course, learn to know ourselves is a constant process. but yeah, that was beautiful, Jessica. I love the way you laid that all out for us. And I think we do have more listener questions, but I think we can save those for another podcast because I want to. It's late right now, and I think we had a good little interaction there, a little good back and forth. Do
Yes.
y'all have any final comments or closing thoughts you want to?
I just wanted to thank you guys for having us on again and supporting us and encouraging us and allowing us to connect with a different audience, through your podcast and invite people in to come experience our next gallery. And I'll let Sarah talk a little bit more about when and where that is and how you can do that.
Yep.
Yes.
So the next gallery is June 17th at Soul Synergy Rocks and Crystals. You can pay for a reserve your spot by giving the store a call. We'll have a link up soon to be able to do that electronically, or you can come and buy your tickets in advance, or like I said, you can buy them in advance, or you can buy them on the day of the event. But we do ask that if you're coming, that you send a little prayer up, put your flashlight up, and ask your loved ones to join you on that in that space and time, 6 to 9 p.m. We do take a little bit of an intermission, but we read pretty much the entire time. So we really want to be dedicated to giving folks who come the best opportunity to connect with somebody who's crossed. And that's really important to us because your time and your energy and your space is important, and we value that. We're really grateful for that. So we just also want to say thank you to the folks who came out to the previous 2 gallery readings. We're so grateful that you came, and thank you so much for taking a chance for a lot of newbies out there who don't quite weren't sure how all this worked, but allowing us to be in that trusting space. That really means a lot in a human form to Jessica and I. Thank you.
Yes. And I'm so grateful and honored to your listeners who submitted questions in, and we'll be listening and tuning in for our answers to their questions. And you guys really are doing a great job, and I love the community that you guys are building and working to collaborate with different people and practitioners and doing this. And we're just blessed and honored to be a part of what you guys are building and creating.
Agreed.
Well,
Thank you.
And we could not be doing it if it wasn't for the people in the community. I mean, yeah. I love this community. I love it a lot.
Me too. We've got a great community building.
Yeah. And so we do have a few more questions, so we will save those for next time, and they'll probably have some more come across our radar before then. And this was Jessica, I think, was this your second time on?
Yes, and I think
Sarah's third.
Yes.
I feel like I put y'all on the hot seat a little more.
It's okay. I love it. I work best under pressure. We're good.
It's like, I'm not gentle with you anymore. We're going to get down and dirty now.
To the nitty gritty. Absolutely.
Yes. But thank you.
Yeah, we love it. I mean, I think there's anything that, like, Jessica, if somebody comes to one of our readings, Jessica and I are authentic human beings. We don't, we're just going to tell you. And that's our personalities too, as a human form.
Yeah.
We're just very upfront, authentic people. And that's how we show up.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things is, your loved ones come and connect with us and choose us as the mediums based on our past experiences, because we've shared similar experiences and feelings and events in our own personal lives to be able to connect and relay that intricate and intimate, feeling with you guys and that healing message. So we get healing too as we're delivering it, because we speak the same language. I don't really get aeronautical engineers or anything like coming to me, because I don't have any experience with that,
Right.
very, very rarely. So they come in and deliver messages through me that relate to me too. So I get that healing and connection with you, with the audience too, and the loved one, based on my own past, and so it's
Mhm.
just healing all around.
Mhm.
Oh,
I love
Yeah,
it.
another quick thing to mention too for people who are just kind of getting started, like experience anything you possibly can in this lifetime. Travel, go to different parts of the country, see things that you've never seen before, plan trips, go places, talk to people who are different. The more exposure you get outside of your own bubble, like, like we often say Mississippi is its own bubble because it is its own bubble in so many ways. But the more
Yeah.
opportunity you have to get outside of the bubble, wherever your bubble is, whatever state that you live in, whatever country you live in, travel, do something different, like experience. That's what Jessica's saying. Broaden your horizon with your life experiences, because when you broaden your life experiences, the ability to connect with so many different spirit communicators gets bigger. Your audience becomes naturally and organically bigger.
And I think if we start with our fellow human beings, if you're open and receptive and inviting to humans, that's teaching you how to do that with spirit.
Agreed.
And the beautiful thing about the world we live in today is that even if we can't physically travel to other places with Zoom now, the internet and even a good old book, reading a book from someone from another country that wrote a
Right.
book
Yep.
about a different
Absolutely.
topic.
Yep.
We have so many opportunities at our fingertips to explore and discover, even if we can't leave the state as often as we would like to.
Right.
But not being able to travel isn't an excuse to not be able to experience the world.
Yeah. Agreed. Good
So,
point. I love that.
but anyway,
Thank you
Emily,
all.
boss lady, we got anything else?
oh. Well, I'm just gonna say something, and I don't really. This may be cut out because I don't deliver messages either, but I'm getting told to just say safety has been a word. Feeling safe has been a word that has been on my radar lately, and I just had a confirmation today that my higher power is just telling me you have safety in me. Don't trust anybody else. Just know that I do talk to God. So, to me, my higher power is God, but he is just, so if anybody else needs that, you just dwell in safety and trust me. So I just want to share that's something that I got from my mother's Bible today, because I've been talking to her. So I don't know.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I want to thank y'all for coming on here and again sharing y'all's beautiful souls with us. And we look forward to the upcoming event and having y'all back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, let's get ready for our work week.
Yes. Well, y'all have a wonderful evening. The summer solstice is upon us, and who better to have on our second installment of Ask a ... series than a practicing witch. What are some general questions you'd like to ask our video podcast guests, Luna, Mercury, Willow, and Selena, about the practice of witchcraft? Go to our website, metaphysicalms.com, and submit your questions. The deadline is June 11th at midnight. Again, thanks for joining us. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent.